Hey, great thinkers. Welcome back to another episode of the Think Great Experience. I am so excited for our guest today. Tasha Schuh is joining us. She is a speaker, an extremely dynamic speaker, a very talented author, and she's a resiliency expert. And we don't have many of those on the show. In fact, this is the first one. And I feel that we are in a time period where we need resiliency training now more than ever. Tasha, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It is an honor to be here.
You know, there are not a lot of resiliency experts. I don't come across those very often. And you have a very unique title, resiliency expert, but you also have a very unique path on how you got there. I don't think this was your life plan when you were younger. And if you don't mind, would you share with us a little bit about how you became a resiliency expert?
I would love to. So growing up, I was just a typical teenager who had full use of my very tall body. I was very involved in sports and music and theater, and really had a plan of my own that included performing, included music, but I went through a life-changing accident when I was 16 years old. I was practicing for my high school's musical production, which was The Wizard of Oz, which has lots of technical parts of the production. And to make a very long story short, I was standing on stage helping with a scene change when from directly behind me, they removed the cover off of the trapdoor on the stage. I had no idea that this had just happened. And with where I was standing, someone told me to move out of the way because I was kind of in the way. And without much thought, I just took one step backward and instantly began falling. And I fell 16 feet to a cement floor where I landed on my head and my body came second, and that only left one thing in between, and that was my neck. So I broke my neck, severely crushed my spinal cord. And when I arrived at the hospital, the doctors just came right out and told my family and I that I would never walk again, that I would be a quadriplegic, and I would use a wheelchair for the rest of my life. And being 1 month away from turning 17 years old, I had dreams. They weren't very high dreams. I really struggled with my self-esteem. I was a very insecure teenager. And so I struggled a lot with knowing what I wanted to do with my life, with being very unsure about my future. And now that they told me that I was going to be in a wheelchair, I thought there's absolutely no way that I can do this. There's no way that this can be my life. And I really wanted to die. I wanted my life to end. And crazy enough, 3 days later, I got very sick, where doctors induced me into a coma. I was in a coma for 8 days, where doctors said I was not going to live. And so when I woke up 8 days later, I knew that I must be here for a purpose. And that honestly was the beginning of me learning about resilience, was that I was here for a purpose. And of course, that was challenged many, 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 many times. And there was so much time where I didn't know what my purpose was, but I just kept going. And I spent 5 more months in the hospital, moved home, graduated high school on time, and just started to see that I could accomplish my dreams. And even though I was sitting in this wheelchair, and today I have to pinch myself on all that I've overcome, because I have 2 bachelor's degrees. I learned how to drive. I built my own home. I've written 2 books. I traveled all over the country speaking, and 7.5 years ago married my Prince Charming. So lots of things that I never thought would happen from sitting in this wheelchair. And so resilience, I look back and see, is what got me through and helped me today say I love my life and mean that with every fiber of my being. And so I think it's so important that we're all resilient, especially for the world that we're in right now.
Well, right now we are coming out of the pandemic, heading into a transition phase. There's so much uncertainty, so many variables that, I mean, when you were 16 and this happened, there were so many uncertainties and so many variables that, I know you've mentioned before that you felt hopeless when you first heard
Oh,
the
yeah.
news.
Oh my goodness. And
I mean, I
for
can't
months,
imagine the thoughts that went through your head as a teenager. You kind of
ugh,
felt like your life wasn't over, but it felt like it was.
oh, there were so many nights where I just prayed that I wouldn't wake up the following morning because there were so many hopeless times. And yeah, I mean, my story would take me 3 weeks to tell everything that happened. But hopelessness is one of the things that I also struggled. I struggled immensely with depression, struggled immensely with at times wanting my life to end. And today, I mean, if I would have quit, I would have missed out on the best part of my life. And so that's why I'm passionate about this, is because I would never have believed how wonderful my life would be in the future. And my life has, I still have struggles. I have challenges just like everybody else,
Sure.
but I'm the happiest I've ever been. And I feel like in that, sharing those tools, sharing what I've learned is what gets me out of bed every morning, makes me so passionate about life. I love helping others.
I mean, when you share your story, I have to imagine, as it did for me right now, it puts things in perspective into other people's lives.
Yes.
I guarantee, well, I can tell you, for me, I think I need to do more. I mean, I hear your story and I'm like, all right, I gotta get after it a little bit more here. You are an inspiration. You
Hmm.
provide hope in a world where there's very little right now. And I want to understand something. You going through this, how important is mindset? Staying in
Oh my
control of your mindset, or not letting it take you over if it's a negative. Can you talk about mindset for a second? Because you did talk about purpose, and that had to have affected your mindset way back when you were 16, that this purpose helped to enhance your mindset. Could you just tell us a little bit your thoughts on mindset?
Oh, mindset is so, so, so important. And it would take me a long time to realize that. It would take me a long time because obviously I had to go through the natural grieving process. That
Yeah.
was not something that I had to go through, denial and just all of those stages. But as in time came to realize, oh my goodness, like what my and I feel as human beings in general, our greatest battle is right here between our 2 ears in our
Yeah.
in our mind. And that we hear things all day long, this little voice that's like, you can't, you won't, you're gonna fail, don't try this, don't, and it's what holds back so many of us. And and especially being a quadriplegic, I heard that voice a lot. And I began to see that I had to stop and think about what I was thinking about.
Hmm.
Because sometimes we just let these thoughts flow and we don't realize how much they're negatively impacting
They do a lot of
our
damage.
lives. Oh my gosh, they do so
Yeah.
much damage. So much. And when we stop to think about what we're thinking about, how we can change that.
Yeah.
We have power over what we are thinking. And so I've learned that and I've seen that and have known it firsthand. I mean, I
Yeah.
have gone through times of depression, and in that depression, it kind of feels good for a while to feel sorry for yourself. And it feels, especially, I went through a time of depression about 9 years ago,
Mhm.
and I was in a relationship and it ended, and I was just really devastated about it and had no idea that my Prince Charming was coming. So so it all worked out. But in this time, it was like I wanted to wallow in my sadness.
Yeah.
And then I just started realizing, Tasha, this is not helping you. So I started writing out phrases on my mirrors, like the best is yet to come, great things are coming my way, to combat all of those thoughts that like you're too late, you're never going to meet someone, you waited too long, or those things that we're struggling with.
Sure.
And so mindset is so, as I began to shift my mind and in a more positive direction,
Yeah.
I began just to see my life turn around.
It's interesting because when I created the company Think Great, it was just those two words, think great. And I realized a long time ago, we've had health challenges in our family, very different than yours. But through it all, I realized nobody could take away my ability to control my thoughts and control my actions, except me.
Yep.
Sometimes we're our own worst enemies.
True.
And what I'm hearing is you first have to get in control of that mindset, control your thoughts, and then it led you to actions such as, writing these affirmations on the mirrors.
Yep.
And then you'd see that every day, which strengthened your mindset, because it's not like the movies where there's that fun montage scene where everything comes together and then they're good for the rest of the movie. As normal human beings, it's kind of like a roller coaster ride. You probably still have ups and downs. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yes, of course. Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's so easy for us to do the woe is me and have the, pity party, especially
Yep.
with the pandemic right now.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I'd be lying if I, over these months, our speaking schedule was completely wiped up from underneath us. And I had moments where I'm like, this is unfair. I'm
Yep.
mad. I'm sad. I miss being in the schools with the students. I miss
Sure.
being with people. But then I remind myself everything that I've gone through, it has somehow helped me. It has made me stronger, and it has always worked out better for
Mhm.
my for me. I mean,
Yeah.
just everything that I've been through, and so I just have to remind myself, and one of my favorite phrases is the best is yet to come. That
Yeah.
was the phrase that really helped me through that difficult time. The best is yet to come. And I posted that everywhere. I had signs, I knew that if I could keep that at the forefront of my mind, that it kept the depression away. It kept me focused on what I was doing, why I was moving forward. And I saw that it was true.
So
I,
I
I
have to ask you a question, because anytime I meet people, and my wife and I, with all the medical challenge, she's had 4 different cancers. She died of cardiac arrest and came back. Um, when I ask her, would she change anything? She always says no. And the reason is that it put us on a pathway to where we have the family we have now. Right. So if we had been going on our goals and dreams and our plan, then right after we got married, which was when she got diagnosed, we probably would have had kids a few years later and what have you. We had to wait almost 6, 7 years to have Erica. And the
Mm.
only reason we waited is because of the first cancer. So if we took away the first cancer, we wouldn't have the daughter we have now. If you could go back in time, you're already answering it. Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't change anything.
I would not change anything that I've been through. And that's the worst. I mean, the worst of the worst. I mean, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I
Right.
wouldn't want anybody to go through what I've been through. But for me, I would not change. And it wasn't just my accident. I've had hospitalizations, I've had
Sure.
other medical things. And it's just like everything. And not that I want to go through these things,
Yeah,
but hindsight is always like,
that's right.
oh my goodness, this worked out so well. And I just, it teaches me so much. And it's really what's made me who I am today. That just to be able to speak on resiliency and know firsthand how people are feeling and how I can help them.
I think more people need to hear your message on resiliency now than ever before, because people have not been trained to go through a worldwide pandemic. They're not prepared any more than they're prepared to come out of it. They're excited to come out of it, but usually during a transition phase is when we realize all the damage that's been done. So we actually need more resiliency after the incident than during the incident. And you're providing that. And you started with kids to a certain extent. You've specialized in giving a message to children.
Yep, to youth.
How did you start focus? What made you go in that direction first?
So I started speaking in 2007, which was to all adults of corporations and
Yeah.
organizations. Absolutely loved it.
Yep.
And thought that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. But in 2014, my best friend from high school lost her 14-year-old son to suicide. And even to this day, it is so difficult to even just talk about, because I knew Logan, and I never saw him without a smile on his face. So it was very, very confusing and just hard to imagine how he could have made this very, very permanent decision. And
Yeah.
so we began learning about other youth and realizing that this in and of itself is a crisis, is our nation is in a mental health crisis. And just really wanted to help be a part of the solution. We just could
Wow.
not sit by the wayside and say, well, I hope somebody does something about that. That's awful. We were like, no, we got to help. So that's what we've been doing. But I also love speaking to adults, and that
Yeah.
is still a portion of our the engagements that we do, because first of all, youth kids don't laugh at my jokes, and so I need adults.
You do need some, yeah.
But I have seen just from the previous, even the engagements that we've done during the pandemic to other adult audiences, like you said, we all need resilience right
That's
now.
right.
This is not just a youth
That's right.
concern. It is everybody. And I feel like I have the tools that can help with that.
Well, and I've seen videos of you speaking at the schools and kids coming up and hugging you afterward. I mean, you are making such a great impact in their lives. And what ages have you spoke with, in regards to children?
So usually it's middle school and high school.
Okay.
But the more we spoke, the more we were doing, actually including elementary schools.
Yeah.
Just because sadly, I mean, there are 7 and 8-year-olds that have chosen suicide.
Yeah.
And they have completed suicide. So we're realizing that it's getting younger and younger. And so it's a little different message, because elementary schools,
Sure.
it's hard to tell a first grader that they have purpose. It's kind of hard to explain that, but we make it to their level. So it's basically K through 12, but really with an emphasis of middle and high school.
When I share my story, I'll share about being a Marine, I'll share about being a caregiver and some of the things I've done. And after a speech, and I have spoke with children too, which is one of the most rewarding things ever. People will come up and say, I had a family member who served, or I had a family member who was ill. And so they can relate to that. Are you finding that when you speak to children, especially those younger ages, are they coming up and saying, I know somebody?
Oh yeah. Well, a lot of them are coming up and saying, I needed that. Depression
That's powerful.
is starting younger and younger. And I think one of the things that youth are struggling with the most, I mean, when I talk to principals and school counselors, it's depression and anxiety, hands down. I mean, just all across the board, every school district. And I want them to know that I struggled with that also, and that yes, it's real, but it can be overcome. It doesn't have to last forever. And I think I've just had so many students come up to me afterwards and say, thank you for telling me that this doesn't have to be my life forever. I needed to hear that. And that, because depression can seem so, for a lack of a better word, just never ending, that
And
it's always going to be that way.
It's hopeless.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
And what's interesting too is that in order to fight the virus, we had children learn from home. So we separated them from their schoolmates, from their teachers, and statistics are showing that within children, I mean adults too, but specifically children, depression and suicide rates have elevated. So,
oh my goodness, yes.
So we took this action to protect them from the virus, and yet so many of them took their own life because they couldn't handle the separation. This shift that happened in the world was just too much for them.
Yeah, and it was heartbreaking to watch, because we were seeing these awful rates before the pandemic, and we knew what was how we knew from the CDC, from NAMI, from all of these organizations, what helps youth, and that's surrounding yourself with people, that's reaching out and talking to people, and here we're isolating them. It was heartbreaking to sit off to the side and watch all this happen. Because
I mean, you are a survivor. You're a survivor. You've survived an accident, but And not just the accident, you've also survived the depression and all the thoughts that come afterwards. So I can imagine when you, and it happened to you when you were a child, as you're watching children separated from their
Oh,
friends, you can already see what's coming.
oh my goodness, definitely.
So tell me, how did the pandemic affect your business? Because here you are, you're going out to schools, you're super dynamic in person and live. And like me as a speaker, you get shut down. You're just, everything is postponed, right? And that was during the 2 weeks to flatten the curve, but it's been over 52 weeks now. So,
Yes.
but how did that affect you delivering your message to children during that? Were you doing it virtual?
We are doing it virtual, but most schools want us to come in person.
Yeah.
There's just something about, and I can't blame them. I mean, I worry
Yeah.
about the youth. We've been doing tons and tons of YouTube and TikTok videos to encourage youth and get the message out to them. And thankfully, schools are now starting to reschedule. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty
Yeah.
crazy. About 2 weeks before the pandemic hit, my husband, because we work together, he's my manager, and he said,
So manager and
"Tasha,
Prince Charming.
yes, all
Okay.
of those. He wears
Great.
all of those hats and does
Great
it all so
titles. I
well."
like it. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So he said to me, he said, "Tasha, our hard work is finally paying off. Like we had worked so hard to get in schools. We had our best speaking schedule. We just were so excited." And just literally, and we thought, oh, 2 weeks. Yeah, we'll be off. And oh my goodness. But at the same time, the message that I give, because of course, I was home for 6 weeks. I did not go anywhere for 6 weeks. And
Yeah.
I need people. I'm a people person.
That's right.
Starting to really, I was really
You
starting
can
to
feel
struggle.
it.
Oh my goodness, so
Yeah.
much. And you know what I did? I pulled out my keynote message and I read through it and I was like, you know what? If you believe in this, this is going to help you. And
That's right.
I, it's the power of path. So it's purpose, attitude, team, and hope
Mm.
is what that acronym stands
Yeah.
for. And I'll tell you, it has helped me. I believe in that message more now than ever. And I see that those are the tools that helped me to get through all of the challenging times that I've been through.
Isn't it interesting, as a speaker or author, as a coach, you have to really put your own materials to test.
Exactly.
I teach leaders that this is the time when your team needs you the most. Well, this is also the time when my team needs me the most, and the time when I need to step up. And yeah, there's times where you watch a year's worth of engagements being postponed. It hits you in the gut, but then you've got
Oh
to get
yeah.
right back after. You need to be resilient. And so I did the same thing. I would review my own materials. I read from my own books, and I even wrote a new book during the pandemic. So I'm like, all right, well, I do talk about time mastery a lot. I better do something with the time I'm not traveling. So I did write a book, but
That's awesome.
yeah, and it's been great. And thank you. But you've got to do something with what you have, is what I'm
Yep.
hearing.
And,
Now,
and that's all you can do. I think that's sometimes, I don't know about you, but you want to make things happen. You want to, and you can't force it. Like you said, you can only control what you can control. And we
right.
can't control what's going to happen tomorrow, but we can control how we react to it and what we do with that time. And that's what we've done. I mean, people are like, "Oh, aren't you bored? Or are you tired of watching Netflix?" And I'm like, I haven't watched one Netflix. I actually feel like I've been busier not speaking because we just shifted gears until we go back to speaking and making sure that everything else we have is set and updated. And
Yeah,
so we're going to be ready. So it's exciting. And we've done quite a few virtual presentations
sure.
too. So I'm not speaking, but
Right.
we've been very busy.
Well, I have also had the opportunity through this time period to enhance our content. Where you take it and you go, okay, I feel that we had phenomenal content on leading and planning and selling and our core three topics, but now we've positioned it to share how to do it through chaos. And your content on resiliency, it is needed today more than ever. And I would say that even though children still need it now more than ever, we're going to need it in the business sector. We are going to
Yeah.
need it, whether it's a small, medium, or large business, it doesn't matter. as we transition people back, I feel that there's going to be some struggles. Everybody's looking at things differently. How is your message resonating with business leaders right now? Because we have a huge following of business leaders, and I know that resiliency, when they hear this topic, their ears are going to perk up. What are you sharing with business leaders right now about resiliency for their people, for themselves too?
Yeah. Oh, thanks. That's a great question. Um, it follows path that purpose, finding purpose now, finding no and believing that you're here for a purpose, because in struggles and in challenges, that's when we hear, in our minds, I'm not making a difference, I'm not helping
Hmm.
anyone. And we tend to not make the impact that we want to make in other people's lives. And as business leaders, that is so important to continue moving forward. And again, our attitude is so important. And realizing that what we're thinking about and the how we're what we're modeling to our employers, because really business leaders are
Powerful. Yeah.
yes, you are a role model, and you teach people how to react, and they will follow your leading. And so I believe that being that role model, being that example that people look up to, in how, and not that you can't have tough days. Not, I'm always, I always want to make sure that people are feeling the struggle, and
Yeah.
not shoved that, because what I was great at stuffing it. I was great at thinking that if I pushed it down, that it would just go away.
Yeah.
But we have to feel our feelings. But at the end of the day, we have to choose to find what the good is in the difficulties.
Well, I've always said any obstacle is there to make us greater. If
Yep.
if we go over it, we got to go over the obstacle. We can't run away from
Yes.
it.
Right.
And
We've
I mean,
got to
even when I
press
was
through.
in boot camp, the Marines are notorious for their obstacle courses. And if you go over the obstacle, build your confidence. It makes you feel better. You accomplish something. Typically, you do it with your team. Um, but what you're sharing is they have to have the resilience to not only make it over the obstacle, but handle the impact afterwards. That resiliency or that
Yes.
endurance, right?
Yes. Yes. And the next part is team. It's so important that creating that teamwork mentality, the team, knowing that people, how important it is to ask for help, how important it is to take care of ourselves. And that is a huge thing that I've learned in my journey, and I'm really passionate about sharing that. I feel like that's a great part of my message for business leaders and their
Yeah.
employers. And then just hope. I mean, hope is something that's really, it's hard to define, but I just see, I recently heard an acronym that says hope stands for hold on, pain ends. And I've just seen that
Wow.
is by holding on the best way. The people are like, how do I hold on? I'm like, don't quit.
I wish I had
Keep
known that
going.
one 20 years ago. Jeez, that's a
I
good one.
know. I know. Isn't that so amazing? I'm thinking, oh my goodness, that's the best way that I can explain hope, because it is something, it's kind of like this. Well, I hope so. That's not hope. Hope is like, this is tough, but I'm going to get through
Yeah.
this, and
You will
I'm going to
make it
see.
through.
Yes. And that is what is so important, because I know so many businesses are struggling, and I know so many places are like, should we quit? Should we?
Yeah.
It's like, we need our businesses. We need all of these people. We need what they're doing. And so we just got to keep going. And I love sharing that message.
Well, and I think business leaders really they need to focus on resiliency. I will guarantee if I were to ask somebody on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is resiliency right now? They'll say a 10. If I were to
Mhm.
ask them, rank your resiliency training program on a scale of 1 to 10, they'll give it a 0. So you can fill that gap. And
Yeah.
and I love a good acronym. I love the hope one, but I love the PATH acronym: purpose, attitude, team, and hope. Every single organization needs that, because we need a pathway to success right now. We need a pathway that will get us out of this current time period. Most people aren't acknowledging there's a transition coming. You had your incident at 16 years old. You had the obstacle. I'm gonna guess that just like with Gina, when she got out of the hospital from the cancer, the transition to a new life, there wasn't as many rules and regulations. It was almost make it up as you go. which can be harder.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes.
So that transition phase sucks.
Oh my goodness.
And every
Again,
business is going into a transition phase right now.
yes, and it is. It can be such a scary time and can feel just like so, like you said, uncertain and almost just not knowing how you're going to get through it. And that's where resiliency does come in. And I did want to mention too, with resilience, I've learned so much about mental health, and I feel like that's goes hand in hand with
Yeah.
my speaking and my the trainings that we do is the mental health aspect,
Yeah.
because our mental health is just as important as our physical health. And that is something as corporations and business leaders we've promoted, take care of yourself
Sure.
physically, but we haven't, and there's a lot of stigma out there. And so we do a lot of help with that too. Two
Yeah.
very important topics right now for our world.
Oh, that's right. Well, and we're focusing more on the mental health, but we may leave out that resiliency component, and it needs to be discussed.
Yeah.
Everybody agrees it's important. You've got to have the resiliency. I'm also going to say, from a business perspective, I know during transition phases, that's when people tend to throw in the towel. They tend to fall apart during a transition. So from a business perspective, to all the business leaders listening right now, they could lose a lot of team members who lack resiliency, and it could impact retention. Are you feeling the same thing, that resiliency could help businesses to retain their people?
I definitely feel that way. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Just by the message that I share about resiliency, boosts morale, it boosts the positivity in the
Yeah.
office, it boosts productivity. And we've just seen that. And the other thing about my message is that I've just seen that people remember me. They see me sitting in the wheelchair, they remember my message. And I've received so many messages over social media that years down the road, I remember when you spoke, and I'm still using those tools that you gave me. So it's memorable. It sticks with people.
Is it fair to say that when you wheel in, that you have everybody's attention?
Yes, yes. My wheelchair, seeing my body, seeing it's an instant
Yeah.
attention getter, and it is it's it helps my message be retained. And especially I start off my message just saying that I love my life. And it shocks a lot of people because the first thing that people think of when they see a person in a wheelchair, I think it tends to be pity. It tends to be like, oh, that poor girl. And I'm like,
I feel
no,
sorry
don't
for
feel
her.
sorry for,
I
oh
feel
yeah,
sorry.
please
Yeah.
don't feel sorry for me. I have an amazing life. And I love sharing that.
You empower people. I mean, part of what you do is empowering them, which is
Yes.
a phenomenal word. We need to use it more right now. But I know when you empower people, part of your message that you're conveying to them is never give up.
Right.
And that's
Right.
been a very important mantra for you for many years, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly. I cannot tell you how many hopeless days I have had and difficulties, and it's there, I have a lot of great songs and music. Music is another thing that helps me a lot, of just songs that are just like keep going,
Yeah.
one more step, keep going, keep going. And those are what really got me through those difficult times. And so, yes, it
Is
is.
it fair to say, since we've had health issues for going on 22 years now in our household, at different levels,
Sure.
is it fair to say it's probably impossible to count the amount of tears that have been shed over the years?
Oh, for sure. Oh my goodness. Yes,
And there's so much behind the scenes nobody ever knows, right?
for sure. Oh yeah, like I said in the beginning, I am just as human as everybody else.
Yeah.
So I'm not, I don't want anybody to come, I don't want any of this to come across, because I am huge on being genuine, huge
Yeah.
on being real with people, because there's a lot of fake people out there. And so I just don't want anyone to think that I don't struggle, that I
Yeah.
don't, yeah, lots of tears, even
Well,
through this pandemic.
Even when I share parts of our story, even some friends had said, I didn't know about that. Well,
Yeah.
I don't post everything on social media,
Oh,
but there's little things that you don't see in a movie. So if you see a movie about somebody who has cancer, or maybe even somebody who's quadriplegic, there's so much left out of what the
yes.
real story really is.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
I remember just Gina waking up in the middle of the night, going to the bathroom, collapsing on the floor during
Oh my.
treatments. And I would pick her up, put her in the car, take her to the doctor's office. Well, you don't see things like that in the movies. The movies with cancer is always the same, where the woman's always in the shower when her hair falls out and cries and curls up in a ball. And that's not how it went down in our household. So, if you're looking at movies to get reference on challenges, you don't always get the whole picture. So there's so much more you've done and experienced than you could ever possibly share.
Right. Oh, yeah, my goodness. Like I said, for me to share everything,
Yeah,
it would take weeks, but it is. But I, how do I say this? Um, yes, tears, it has been so difficult, but at the end of the day, and even even when I wake up in the morning, I just say to myself, no matter what happens today, no, because I can't control what other people are going to do.
that's
I
right.
can't control what's going to happen to me, but I am going to do it with a good attitude. And, I had a friend, my neighbor died of cancer probably 7 years ago, and he was the most positive person that I've ever met. And I just know what he would do to just have one more day with
Yeah,
his family, with his children. And those are the things, learning from others, the people that I've met, that I just, at the end of the, you just can't sweat the small stuff. It just, you have to you have to focus. You have to realize that life is a gift, that it's not guaranteed
that's right.
tomorrow, and therefore we have to live every day to the best of our ability.
You know,
And that's
no, you're so right, because you're still getting into that 6 inches between our ears, right? We have to
yes.
have that mindset and that attitude of gratitude, which I always love.
Yes. Oh,
For Gina and I remember when she was sick, when it first happened, you do feel lost. You don't know where to start, like, what now? And I remember the very first motivational thing I ever said in my whole life. I said, let's go from point A to point B with the best attitude. And we didn't know where point B would be. I mean, it could have been death. We didn't know.
oh, right.
But we just said, let's take every step. Let's move forward in the best way possible. And that helped us out so much. And we could go back to that mindset. You know, I know for you, you focus on being a role model, especially when you talk to children. How
Yes.
how how does that help you every day to keep in mind that you're a role model for so many kids? What does that do for you mentally?
Well, first of all, it's so rewarding because I do know that I know that everybody's struggling in some way, shape, or form.
Sure.
And so to be a role model is a huge responsibility. I mean, there are lots of people out there that can give great advice, but at the end of the day, aren't living exactly what they're saying. So
Right.
so that's a huge thing to me, is integrity, being genuine is huge. And um I think that is crucial.
Keeps you going.
And just, oh my goodness, yes. I see that so much. And just knowing that we're helping people. I mean, the messages, I get messages from youth that just bring
Mm.
tears to my eyes, just because of the what they say. We met with a student last year for over an hour. She wanted her life to end. She
Ah,
didn't think she had any purpose. And we almost sat with her until we were blue in the face, trying to give her this message of hope, one hoping that it stuck, hoping that it helped. And she wrote me last month and she said, I graduated with my class. I'm living on my own. I'm going to school.
wow.
Thank you so much. And I'm like, yes,
Isn't that the
yes, yes,
greatest?
yes.
That's the
Oh my
greatest.
goodness.
That's the greatest paycheck, isn't it?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you cannot put a price tag on that. And that's what fuels us. And why we do everything that we do.
I'm going to say two things. Number one, more children need to know about you because you need to be a role model for more children, hands down. There's not a lot of good role models out there right now. So they need more like you. Second of all, I think beyond the children's side of things, you're a great role model for adults. I think that when people hear your story, your willingness to share it, your willingness to say, hey, here's what happened to me, you truly put life into perspective. I don't know any other way to say it rather than you make me want to appreciate my life more and do more with it, which is probably what your part of your objective is. So it already worked in the short time that we've been together today. I know it'll work for other people too.
Exactly.
You know,
It is, I don't even, I don't know how to even respond to that, but it is,
you're an impactful person and you're helping people to find that greatness in their life. And you know what? Greatness isn't about, in my opinion, it's not necessarily about the big house or the cars or the wealth, or you saved someone's life.
mm,
That's great. You know, you're doing that on a daily basis. You know what the crazy part is? You're impacting lives you may not know about them all because they're not all going to reach out to you. But I love that you have role model. You know, that's a focal point. But I also have to ask you about your favorite cliche. Life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. I love that. Why? Tell me
well,
what does that mean to you? Because you've encountered your own storm.
well, and that's when we were talking earlier, that was a quote that came up when I was going through that very difficult time. And I just wanted it to end. I didn't want to, I was like, I don't want to go through this. Like, I just want it to end. I want to skirt around it. I want to
Yeah.
shove it off to the side. And I just began to realize that there was no way but to go through it.
Yeah.
And if I could go through it and learn from it, and if I could become a better person, if I could help others while I'm going through the storm, I am doing exactly that. And it became I had that written right on my mirrors. And I just was like, you know what? I'm going to go through this. I'm going to walk through this storm. And oh my goodness, I looked back and I'm like, I am dancing in the rain. This
That's
is
right.
amazing.
Yeah, it
So
reminds me of the
yeah,
old movie Dancing in the Rain, right?
oh, it's just, and it's so true.
Yeah,
I love that quote.
I do too. I think it's so powerful because we all have our storms. For many
Yes.
people right now, children, adults, the pandemic has been a storm that has gone on too long.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
But there's some rain out there that we could dance in, is what I'm
Uh,
hearing. We could be all
yes.
become better through this.
Yes.
So I want to ask you about your books. As an author, titles are very important to me. And when you get the title, you get pretty excited, right?
Oh yeah.
Now, the titles for your books have so much meaning in them. I mean, as I looked up your books, I just kind of shook my head and I was like, there had to be a point when you said, "Oh, that's it right there." You know, my last step backward. There's so much meaning in there, especially when we know the storm you went through. But then your other book, My Next Move Forward, I shook my head again. I'm saying, these are great titles. Can you tell us a little bit about your books?
Yeah. So my last step backward is my story. It's my memoir of, my childhood, my teenage years, performing, all the things that I was active in, and then my accident and my recovery, and just all those details that make it so impossible to share everything when I'm speaking, because there's just so much more, so many other things that I've been through that brought me to where I am today.
Yeah.
And so that's my first book of just my rehab and just everything that I went through. And that title, oh my goodness, because yes, it was my last step that I would ever take. That was the last time I would walk. And so that step, um, it was so important. But also I shared that I was a very, insecure teenager, not making good choices. So in my own life, I was also taking some steps backward that were not good for me. And this accident fueled me in time
Yeah.
to move forward and live life to the fullest. So that's really, oh my goodness, when we found that title, it just
You know it when
clicked.
it hits you, huh? And that one,
Oh,
I read that title and it hit me. I said, wow, it couldn't be any better than that. But
yeah.
let me ask you a question about your story. Going back, in the first book, you talk about your story. How did
Yep.
your friends react? Here at 16 years old, we're very self-centered at that point. We're still trying to discover who we are. There's a lot going on. It's high school. What was your experience with friends at that point? How did they react
Oh,
to it? Do you find out who's who during a storm?
yeah. They say you find out who your friends are, and that was exactly it, because the people that I thought would be there weren't. And the people that I didn't think would be there were. And
Mhm.
it was a hard lesson to learn when I was
Yeah.
already going through so much, but I had amazing people that were there for me and that
Mhm.
really helped me. My family, oh my goodness, my family. I mean, my sister lost 2 jobs because she wouldn't leave my side.
Wow.
And so, I mean, that just shows just
I hope
how
she has a job
amazing
now,
my
right?
family.
Okay, because if
Yes.
not,
Oh,
we are
yes.
going to find somebody to hire her right now.
Exactly. That is, my entire family was amazing. My doctor to this day says that if he could clone one mom, it would be mine. So that says so much about my mom. But my friends, there's, it's, I had a lot
Some,
of guy friends,
yeah,
because I was always one that hated drama, and so I had a lot of friends that
sure.
were male, and they just could not handle seeing me going through all of this, and so it was really hard that they were not coming to visit me and were not, um, they weren't there for me. But
Yeah.
I did have, when I've seen other people go through similar situations, I see now that I was very blessed by the people that was an option. And I like I said, my story's so long. So one thing to just also mention that really throws a whole wrench into all of this is that 3 days before my accident, one of my best friends was in a car accident.
Jeez. When it rains, it
So
pours.
yes, oh my goodness. So I'm at play practice. I actually didn't want to be there. I wanted to be in the hospital visiting her, but she had had a stroke that day and they were not allowing visitors because they did not even know if she's going to survive. So here I was airlifted to Rochester and she was airlifted to Ramsey, which is now Regions in the Twin Cities. So we're like 50 to 70 miles apart. So our friends had to really choose, because we had the same group of
Sure.
friends. And so that was a whole nother dynamic. But I think that they all did a very good job of taking the time because, yeah, they have jobs, they're in sports. They really, and so I was in the hospital for almost 6 months. And the entire time that I was in the hospital, I only had 2 evenings where I did not have company.
Wow. I mean, that really goes back to the importance of a team. A team
Yes.
isn't just on a football field, or it's not just in the workplace. We need teams in our lives too.
Oh, and that that's what made me,
You can't do it alone.
oh, you can't. And those were the friends that when I wanted to sit home crying, we're like, we're taking you out. We're going to a movie. We're going out to eat. I'm like, I don't want to. And they're like, we're going. And I'm like, come home now, a whole different person because I got out and they were there for me. And I mean, that's just
Just
so
great
many
friends.
stories of that. Yes.
So,
Yes.
so you've got your first book was My Last Step Backward. And
Yep.
then tell us a little bit about My Next Move Forward. That is the second book, correct? Okay.
Correct. Yep. Yep. So that book is about Doug and I and our dating and
Prince Charming, right?
marriage relationship. Right? Prince
Okay.
Charming. So it's quite a story, especially because um I never thought I would have a love story. And I was actually my boyfriend that I had at the time of the accident. We were very serious. And when he broke up with me, I thought, who's gonna choose me? I mean, no, that was my only hope
A
to
lot
ever
of
getting
thoughts go
married.
through your head, huh?
Oh my goodness. And
Yeah.
just feeling such little worth and such little value. What can I offer someone? How could we ever have a normal marriage and relationship? And
Right.
so when Doug and I were dating and we got married, and trust me, there were a lot of people that fed into those fears, that thought that Doug must have an ulterior motive, and
Mm.
and some people said some pretty rude, blunt things to me that I was like, whoa, okay. So I think I need to educate
Did they
people.
just have a they just had a hard time accepting that he truly loved you? Was that
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It was really, and it was, I'm from a small town,
yeah.
and but yeah, yeah. Some of the things I was like, you just said that. Oh my goodness. And so I've always, I was always curious about people with disabilities, and fell into all of those stereotypes. Like when I would see someone in a wheelchair, I'd be like, oh, I feel so sorry for them. They must be depressed and their life must be awful. And so for me, I try to be such an open book so
Yeah.
that those myths and stereotypes and generalizations can be removed. Because once I got married, I was like, oh my goodness, all these things that I was afraid of, all these things that people thought were going to be true aren't. And we have a
Mm.
very normal, healthy, happy marriage. And I wanted to share that from everything to how we work together
Yeah.
to to sex to everything,
Because
because
there's so
that's
many
normal.
perceptions,
Oh my goodness, that is so true.
you
So
know, and
true.
and for everybody out there, perception is their reality. It doesn't mean it's the truth.
No, no. And I wanted to share. I was like, well, if they're thinking it, how many more people are thinking this?
Yeah.
And so because of that, I'm like, I want to educate, and I want other people with disabilities to know that they can have a normal, healthy marriage, and other people that are going through struggles and challenges, whether
Well,
it be a health concern.
you're helping us to have resilience, but you're also helping the disability community or the quadriplegic community as a voice for them to have people understand them. And I think that's huge. You know, we
It's
don't understand. We don't know what we don't know.
and that's exactly it. I had to live this life in order to figure that out, and that's why I wrote that book, was to help, because with the title, my next move forward,
Love
there's
that one too.
so much. Yeah, and that's exactly
Next
it.
time I
And
write a book, I'm going to check with you and Doug and say, hey, I'm writing a book. Can you guys help me with a title? Your titles are awesome.
I would love that. Thank you.
Well, the other thing is in the community, the disability community or the quadriplegic community, I'm in the military or veteran community. Um, are there charities or organizations that you work with, that you're a part of, or that people should know about if they want to help support this community out there?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, there's so many. I don't even know where to start. Christopher Reeve's Foundation is a huge, huge.
He
I
must
am
have brought a
just,
ton of awareness.
oh my goodness. Before his accident, there was very little being done I mean, there was things being done, but just
Yeah,
so much more, so much more. And he has just a great, I mean, it's so sad that he passed, but
I know.
so wonderful how they've continued his mission and message of, when he had his accident, he said, I would have traded my life with a bum on the street. But before he died, he was like, I would not change anything that I've been through. It really was a tragedy that he died.
Truly, truly a Superman. Nobody,
Oh,
you
yes.
know,
Even more so. I mean, it's
yeah,
that wheelchair, he did so much. He did
yeah.
so much. And so his organization, we do a lot also with American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and
Okay.
Save is right here in for us in our backyard, Bloomington, Minnesota, and it is one of the original foundations for suicide prevention. And so we love working with them and are looking forward to doing more with them.
And I know
As
you're also interested in doing more in the military community.
yo, my goodness, my dad was he was in Vietnam and
Okay.
he was in the army, and I have always had a passion for helping our military. That is such, I am so thankful for our military. Every time I sing the Star Spangled Banner, I can't even get through it without crying, because I'm just so proud of our country, and proud of our those who are serving, and
Yeah.
those who are really just freedom is not free.
It's
And
not
that is
free.
what our military
And there's
people
people
bring.
paying for it every day, and some people coming back with disabilities.
Oh, yes. Oh my goodness.
Or even if
That
they
is,
don't have disabilities, just coming back from combat or long deployments or multiple deployments.
yes.
Resiliency is so important.
Oh,
I'm committed to connect you with as many people in the military as I can, because I think they need to hear your message. I really
I would
believe that.
absolutely love that.
Yeah.
I would absolutely love
We're going
that.
to tag team that one, Tasha. We are on a mission together to help bring resiliency to our military and veteran communities,
I
and
would
even to
love
the
that.
military spouse community.
Oh,
Military
that
spouses need to
too.
hear your message too, and
Mm.
they're an awesome community. Well,
Oh my
let me ask you this: if somebody's listening right now, maybe they have had an accident or a disability or a storm that they've encountered, but they want to achieve greatness like you have. What is some advice you have for somebody that is just getting ready to move forward?
That could be a whole nother hour, but
Yeah.
but just as I've been sharing, keep going, surround yourself with people that love you, reach out and ask for help. It is okay to ask for help.
Yeah,
There is a stigma in our society that we have to do it all ourselves. We can't. We
that's right.
need each other. It is okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
I can't say that enough. And just the importance of hope, of having hope, believing that better days are ahead, and that we're going to get through this. We're
That
going
the
to get
best
through
is
this.
yet to come.
Yes. Honestly, if you have made it through the last year, you can make it through anything. And that is what is so important, is that you've made it so far. Don't quit.
I have a feeling that there's a lot of people listening that are writing things on their mirrors right now, and they may want to reach out to you. Maybe they have a children's organization they'd like you to speak to, maybe have you speak at an event with business leaders or come into a business, or maybe even the military. Tasha, what's the best way for people to reach out and connect with you?
My website, which is tashaschuh.com. It's TASHASCHUH. And our website has a lot of youth, about youth, but if you scroll to the bottom, we have a tab that says adult audiences.
Yep.
So they can click on either of those and can get all the information. And I would love to hear from people.
Well, I think at some point you and I should share the stage. I would
I would
love
love
to.
that.
I would love to do a tag team with you and really impact people with resilience, with leadership, with a new way of thinking, right? Thinking great about resiliency. Maybe there's something there.
Ooh, I love it.
We'll
That's
have you and
so
Doug come up with the
cool.
titles. You're far better at it.
Oh,
Well,
I don't know about that, but that's awesome.
well, I just wanted to thank you so much for blessing us with your time today. You are an inspiration, much more than just resiliency. You are showing us to have a different outlook on our life. And for that, I am so thankful.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're truly amazing. So until the next podcast, thanks for being here.